Hey folks, I'm back with another video, and this one's gonna be a little bit different. Today, I'm gonna be painting a Dungeons & Dragons miniature figurine. Now, I've got a friend that I play D&D with, and he's got a 3D printer, and he's been bringing me all these really cool miniature figurines. I've got lots of experience with pen art, but I don't have much at all with painting. So let's dive in and get painting an epic dragon miniature figurine. Here's what the raw, unpainted mini looks like, fresh from being printed. As you can see, there's a lot of detail here. And my goal is going to be to try to showcase a lot of that detail as much as I can with my painting. And to start things off, I'm going to be using a metallic paint mixed with gray, mixed with black. And looking at this figurine and how I want to layer these paints out, I know I want to start with that rock as my base layer. And I'm going to build everything else over top of that. For example, I don't want to paint those fingers red and then have to go in there between those finger digits to paint that stone later. I think the safe bet is to start with this stone first. I'm just using a little bit of the metallic paint just to give it that bit of sheen. I'm not trying to be particularly sloppy here, but I'm also not trying to be incredibly precise because I know I'm going to be going over these fingers and other pieces later with a different color. So I'm just making sure that I'm going around and catching as much of this stone surface with my brush as I can reach. Next, I'm moving on to the fire breath. And with that, I'm using a bright red and a gold metallic color. Again, just gently mixing in this metallic to give it a bit of sheen and pearlescence to it. I feel like that'll make it look pretty cool when it dries. This really fiery, shimmery red. Next, I'm adding in some canary yellow to these flames. So just along some areas that look like they have a bit of movement and flow to them, I'm adding in kind of this yellow streak that tapers down. So I'm just going around, following the flow of the print and making these flames pop. After that, I'm moving on to a silver metallic and a black blend for the horns and talons of this beast. This blend is quite a bit darker than what I used for the rock, as well as it has more silver metallic in it, just to try to give these horns some texture, make them really look obsidian and dark. And because I know I'm going to be going over all the dragon's body and scales with red, again, I'm not trying to be sloppy, but I'm not being entirely perfect where I get to the base and the transition of these horns. Because I know I'm going to be painting over that area, and that's where I'll be more precise. let's work on the dragon. For this, I did a blend of deep red and a touch of gold metallic. Again, I find with these blends, it just looks so cool and gives it a bit of that pearlescent sheen to it when it hits the light. And I thought about going into this, how to differentiate the dragon's breath from it being a red dragon. And the main difference being using that bright red for the flames and using this deep crimson red for the body. And I'm just loading up the paint on this. Not so much that we're not gonna be able to see the texture on it, but just trying to make sure I get really good coverage. So I'm using a bit of a thicker brush just to get more paint across more surface area. But when I get to areas where I need to be more careful and more precise, I'm bringing in the thinner brush. And with that thinner brush, I'm getting into the areas like around the horns, near the dragon's breath, around its fingers, all those areas that have transitions. And one good tip that I was told is to blend a little bit more than I think I need. And if I have any leftover while I'm painting this figurine, pop it in a Ziploc and into the fridge. And that'll keep it liquid for quite a while. Let's say I'm painting with the crimson red, and I get some on its horns, at least I can go back to my fridge and grab some of that horn paint. And once it all dries, I can just go in and touch those areas up. So that's what I do, is I keep a little bit of each blend so that I can go back and do touch-ups later. And around these fingers, I'm moving as carefully as I can. And like I said, I'm using this thin-tipped brush and taking my time with precise strokes. For me, this was probably the hardest area of this entire model, because I really didn't want to have to do a bunch of back and forth with, oops, I got some red on the rock, and then, oh, I've got more silver on the red fingers. I wanted to do this with as little mess as possible. And then once I've got good coverage of that deep red over the dragon's body, I just touched up a few of these horns from that paint that I saved from earlier. And once that was touched up, I went through and I painted a few of the extra horns that I thought would look good with that obsidian color. So the horns that run down its snout, around its eyes, some over the cheeks and around the mouth. One other thing I did to bring out some of the detail of the model, I went around and did some particular scales on the tail and on the wings. And I did that with the blend that I did on the dragon's body, that deep red and gold metallic, but I added in even more gold metallic this time around to make those scales pop. And then to really finish it up, I went for some menacing yellow eyes. And I carefully just dabbed out the shape that I wanted. Now, you can leave your figurine like this, but I like to add a bit of a protective varnish to it. So I used this matte varnish, and even though it does say matte finish, it is pretty glossy. I would try to figure out another protective solution, but I do like it, so I'm going to apply some. And I'm just going over this whole thing, and I'm not trying to be too liberal with it, just a thin coat. And once that dries, I'm going in with a wash. And this is a soft tone Warhammer figurine wash. And this really finishes it up. Creates depths, shadows, and contrast by just settling into all the little crevices. And because it's already a pretty dark figurine, I'm going with a soft wash. I don't need it to be super shadowy or contrasty. Once that dries, this is what we're looking at. Looks pretty slick, I would say. Now, I don't know how I feel about the final finish on the varnish. In person, it does look pretty good, but it sure catches the light and makes it shine. For my first figurine, this looks pretty epic. I'm pretty happy with it, and I can't wait to get it on the battle mat. Let me know your thoughts on this. Okay, I want to thank you all for watching this video. And hey, if you've got any tips or tricks on how I can improve my work painting minifigurines, comment down below and let me know. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate all the support. Okay, until next time.